Weapons of war have always been things that don't pay much attention to morality and ethics, especially when we talk about modern weapons. But when the United States decided to develop the weapon we will be talking about today, it began to cross the line. During World War II, there was a competition to see which army could create the most destructive and efficient weapons. Germany had its Panzer tanks, Japan had its Zero fighters, Russia had the Mosin-Nagant rifle, and so on. After Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, a Hawaiian dentist named Lytle S. came up with something for revenge. Explosive bats. Yes, that's exactly how you hear it. The idea was to free millions of bats from bombers. Each night, the animals would be equipped with a powerful charge of napalm, a particularly powerful and light explosive. The bats, when released from the bombers, would instinctively take refuge among the constructions of Japanese cities. After a while, the charge would detonate thanks to a timer, wreaking havoc on the population, much more deadly than conventional bombardments. However, if there are so many animals already trained, such as carrier pigeons, why use bats? The answer is very simple. These animals are capable of flying with a load much heavier than their weight, and they can also orient themselves perfectly at night, which is when the bombardments are most effective, since planes are most difficult to see. Lytle S. the dentist sent his proposal to the White House, and surprisingly, President Roosevelt approved the project, allocating $2 million for its development, quite a large amount of money considering the era. Despite what one might believe, the first tests in the Nevada desert yielded excellent results. Bats were carried in boxes, each with 1,000 of the animals. Each bomber could hold 200 boxes, or 200,000 bats. These were released over a fake city built in the middle of the desert, and they destroyed it right down to the foundations. In spite of this, and without much time passing, the United States Army abandoned the project completely. Why would they do so if the plan seemed perfect? Well, there were several reasons. First of all, it was very expensive to acquire so many animals, considering that they had to be corralled first. Keep in mind that the idea was to send a whole bunch of loaded bombers to Japan. Imagine for a moment how difficult it would be to capture millions and millions of bats. That's not counting all the timers that had to be made and installed in every load of napalm. The second is that bats could not be domesticated and trained, or at least not in such a short time, so it was common for them to fly wherever they wanted, exploding where they shouldn't have. Additionally, since the attacks were supposed to be nocturnal, the bats simply wouldn't go to rest on the buildings, which would cause a large number of them to explode into the air without causing much damage. But the straw that broke the camel's back came during a test at an airbase in New Mexico. Bats were mistakenly released, setting the facility on fire and resulting in several casualties. Since then, the US government preferred to act against the clock and finance the Manhattan Project, the atomic bomb, a much more effective weapon but even less humane, which was the one that achieved the surrender of the Japanese. At this point, it is difficult to say that it would have been preferable to use explosive bats rather than atomic bombs, while arguing that the destruction would certainly have been much less. But what about bats? Millions and millions of bats that fly innocently to their death, to the Holocaust. Without a doubt, every day, it is more and more difficult to find the humanity. What do you think of this project? Do you think that if they had had more time, bats could have been trained properly, making them fly where they should? For now, put yourself in the place of the Japanese settlers. Imagine that in your city there appears in the middle of the night a cloud of bats that covers the light of the stars, and within moments, everything turns into fire and destruction.